What if the greatest con man in history was not just a swindler? What if he was a key, a living cipher that unlocked the secret anxieties and hidden desires of an entire continent on the brink of revolution? His name was Cagliostro. He appeared in the glittering courts of 18th century Europe as if from nowhere. He claimed to have walked with the pharaohs, to possess the elixir of life, to command spirits and turn lead into gold. Historians label him a fraud, charismatic charlatan who preyed on the gullible. But that feels too easy. Why did kings, queens, and cardinals hang on his every word? What did they see in his eyes that made them risk their fortunes and their reputations? They were not fools. They were the most powerful people on earth. What we are about to explore is not just the biography of a master manipulator. It is a journey into the heart of belief itself. A story about a man who became a living myth, a symbol so powerful it threatened to burn down the old world. This is the story of how one man's impossible secrets held an entire continent spellbound and nearly tore it apart. To understand the Cagliostro phenomenon, you have to understand the world he entered. This was the Age of Enlightenment, a time when reason was declared king. But beneath the surface of logic and science, there was a deep knowing hunger for the mystical, for wonder. And into this void stepped a man who was pure, uncut spectacle. The man who called himself Count Alessandro di Cagliostro was not born a count. The paper trail, thin as it is, points to one Giuseppe Balsamo, born in 1743 in the crowded, sun-baked streets of Palermo, Sicily. A petty criminal and apprentice pharmacist with a talent for forgery and a restless spirit. So how does a boy from the gutters of Sicily reinvent himself as a timeless adept, the confidant of European royalty? That is the first layer of the enigma. He didn't just change his name. He erased his past and replaced it with a myth. He told people he was an orphan, raised by mystics in the heart of Arabia, taught the secrets of the pyramids not from books, but from direct experience. He let it be known he was centuries old, kept alive by his own powerful elixirs. It was a story so audacious, so utterly unbelievable, that people had no choice but to be intrigued. His true genius, however, was not in the lies themselves, but in the system he built around them. Picture this: a lavishly decorated drawing room. In London or Paris, the air thick with incense and the scent of expensive perfume. Europe's most jaded aristocrats are gathered, their faces masks of nervous anticipation. At the center is Cagliostro, not merely performing magic, but initiating them into his own grand invention, the Egyptian rite of Freemasonry. This was his masterstroke. He hijacked the popular and secretive structure of Freemasonry and infused it with high-octane mysticism. He offered them not just social status, but a direct line to the lost wisdom of the pharaohs. He promised them alchemy, not just to make gold, but to perfect their very souls. As historian Ian McCollman details, Cagliostro's system was a masterful blend of Masonic ritual, alchemical promises, and pure theatrical showmanship. He was selling an experience, a spiritual adventure for an age that had grown bored of its own gods. His methods were a masterclass in psychological manipulation. He used scryers, often young children or innocent-looking girls called doves, who would stare into a crystal or a bowl of water and describe visions of the future or messages from the spirit world. Was it genuine clairvoyance? Or was Cagliostro a brilliant ventriloquist of the soul, projecting his own knowledge onto these blank canvases? He would arrive in a new city and within weeks seem to know the secret debts, the hidden affairs, and the deepest spiritual longings of its most powerful figures. He was the 18th century equivalent of a hyper-personalized psychic algorithm, feeding people the exact miracle they craved. From Warsaw to St. Petersburg, he became a sensation. He healed the sick, sometimes with simple herbal remedies, other times with what appeared to be sheer force of will. He distributed money to the poor, building a reputation as a philanthropist, a man of the people. This was a critical part of his appeal. He wasn't just a magician for the rich. He was a friend to the downtrodden. It made him seem untouchable, a figure of pure benevolence. Already intrigued? Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. He was more than a man. He was a mirror reflecting the desires of an entire society. But a mirror can crack, and as he made his way to the most volatile and glamorous court in the world, the Paris of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, Cagliostro was about to step into a trap made of greed, ambition, and one of the most famous pieces of jewelry in history. What happens when a master of illusion is caught in a very real conspiracy? Paris, a city of light, but also of deep shadows. And in those shadows, a plot was brewing that would ensnare Cagliostro and tarnish the crown of France forever. It is known to history as the affair of the diamond necklace. And here, the story takes a very dark turn. Imagine a piece of jewelry so extravagant it's almost sickening. A cascading river of 647 flawless diamonds, weighing nearly 2,800 carats. A treasure so immense it could fund a small war. It was commissioned by King Louis XV for his mistress, but he died before it was finished. Now the jewelers were desperate to sell it, and Queen Marie Antoinette had publicly and wisely refused. The official story goes like this. A desperate, ambitious courtier named Jean de la Motte convinced the fantastically wealthy and gullible Cardinal de Rohan that the Queen secretly wanted the necklace. She forged letters from Marie Antoinette and even hired a woman who looked like her for a brief, moonlit meeting with the Cardinal in the gardens of Versailles. Rohan, convinced he was winning the Queen's favor, agreed to buy the necklace on her behalf. He took it to Jean, who promptly had her husband break it apart and sell the diamonds on the black market. So where does Cagliostro fit into this? He was the Cardinal's spiritual guide, his mystic. He had been feeding Rohan's ego for months with visions and prophecies of glory. He was the one who assured the Cardinal that his destiny was entwined with the Queen. But what if Cagliostro, the master reader of minds, completely misread the room? What if the Grand Adept was, for the first time, outplayed? Some historians, like Frances Mossacker in her deep dive, The Queen's Necklace, suggest Cagliostro wasn't the criminal mastermind. He was the perfect scapegoat. Think about it. Jean de la Motte needed a story so fantastic that a powerful cardinal would believe it. Who better to have in the background than a man who claimed to talk to angels and lived for centuries? Cagliostro's presence lent the whole insane scheme a veneer of supernatural credibility. He was the magical smokescreen for a very sordid, very human crime of greed. When the scandal exploded, the king was furious. Cagliostro, along with the Cardinal and Jean, was arrested and thrown into the notorious Bastille prison. The magician who claimed to be immortal was now in a cold stone cell. It seemed his game was over, but then the most unexpected thing happened. At his trial, Cagliostro defended himself with magnificent flair. He portrayed himself not as a swindler, but as an innocent mystic, a man of charity persecuted by a corrupt and tyrannical regime. The Parisian public, already seething with resentment against the Queen and the monarchy, bought it completely. He was acquitted. The crowds cheered his name in the streets. He had won. But in doing so, he had helped humiliate the French monarchy on a global stage. He didn't just swindle a cardinal. He made the entire royal court look like fools. He won his freedom, but he was exiled France. The man who had held Europe in his thrall was now a pariah. This raises the ultimate question. Was Cagliostro a powerful mage brought down by a common con? Or was he the most brilliant charlatan of all, who played his final role so convincingly that he accidentally helped light the fuse of the French Revolution? His exile from France should have been the end of the story, a footnote in the strange history of Europe, but the ghost of Cagliostro was now too big to be contained. He wandered Europe for a few more years, a celebrity haunted by his own legend. He eventually made a fatal mistake. He traveled to Rome, the one city where the power he claimed to wield was met by an older, more ruthless authority. The Holy Inquisition in 1789, the same year the Bastille he once inhabited, was stormed by revolutionaries. Cagliostro was arrested by the Papal States. He was charged with heresy, magic, and most damningly, Freemasonry, the one institution that could not be charmed, that could not be fooled by scrying mirrors or alchemical promises, put him on trial for his very soul. He was sentenced to death, a sentence later commuted by the Pope to life in prison. A man who claimed immortality died alone in 1795 in a grim fortress cell, his name already a byword for both genius and deceit. He faded from history and solidified into legend. So what was he? A simple con man who got lucky? A genuine mystic whose power ultimately failed him? Or something far more profound? Cagliostro exposed a fundamental truth about power and belief. He demonstrated that in an age hungry for certainty, the person who can craft the most compelling story holds the ultimate power. He didn't just sell them magic. He sold them a sense of meaning in a world spinning out of control. He was a walking, talking psychological operation, a human placebo effect so potent that he made kings and cardinals believe in the impossible. Perhaps his greatest secret was not the elixir of life, but the knowledge that humanity will always choose a beautiful lie over a hard truth. And that's our hunt for now. A strange cocktail of documented history, court records, and tantalizing what-ifs drawn from the historical sources of his time. What do you believe he truly was? If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of the past, hit subscribe and join our hunt for the next mystery.